Ed, we're back, and, I don't often like to talk politics. I know it's part of what we do in the gun industry, but I'm really bugged by this recently declassified report. Tulsi Gabbard has declassified a report in which the Biden administration, the previous administration, singled out gun owners as potential domestic terrorists and specifically, this is the important part, specifically had a plan to try to ban modern sporting rifles, the AR-15, and anything with what they consider to be a large capacity magazine. For me, this just goes to show that no matter what we do, the gun control fight is never over.
Never. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Some people in government like to consider you a terrorist because you disagree with their stance on the bearing of arms.
Yeah, with how they think they're going to stop crime.
Right. We've been over this in other videos. Tyrants hate easily carried firearms and they hate rifles. They can't stand them. And the excuse for this will be, oh, we were just wargaming. There's thousands of things that we wrote up that we were never going to do. Whatever it is, whatever side's doing it, there's always that explanation of, look, this was you're throwing ideas around. Well, stop throwing that idea around.
Yeah, I think
there are actual terrorists out there in this country that you could spend your time going after rather than people who own modern sporting rifles.
Yeah, and the fact that, what are we up to? Some 30 million AR-15s in the country now or something like that?
It's a lot.
Yeah. In the old days, I'm old enough to remember the original assault weapons ban of 1993, authored by Joe Biden. There was something like less than 1 million AR-15s in circulation. And since then, the market has just exploded. It is the single most popular centerfire rifle in the country. And it's not being used in a lot of crimes. It's being used in some crimes which were terrible, but by the same token, the vast majority of us who own the AR platform rifle are not using them to commit crimes.
The anti-gun people shot their shot.
Yeah.
Okay, they did the 94 AWB, and it was going to sunset in 2004. And they laid out their case of listen, the crack wars in all of our biggest cities have been nightmarish for everyone. We need to do something. That's the classic. Somebody should do something.
Somebody's got to do something.
So they passed that, and they saw that it did not have the effect that they thought it was going to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course people are going to want to try to do that again because it doesn't have to make sense. They're doing this because they hate guns, and they hate anybody who likes guns, and it's an easy way to punish their political enemies. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if this got introduced again or if they decided to go for it again, whatever. They're never going to stop, like you said. Rust and politicians. Not only are they the two biggest threats to guns, rust and politicians never sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And they want to know what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it and all of those sorts of things. And that leads me right into the next thing I've been watching for a while now that's really starting to bug me. And I know what the answer is. The answer is use cash. But these merchant category codes are being pushed forward by anti-gunners and credit card companies to add a specific code in the merchant category when guys like you and I, or women or whoever, when gun buyers are buying guns and gun-related items, they will be listed under a separate code on the credit card billing statements so that the government can know who's buying guns with their credit cards. And what are we going to do about that? And the reason this popped up is Alaska. I think there's 11 states now that are saying these merchant category codes will not be used. They've made them illegal, but Alaska has stepped up to say, you know what, we're proposing a law. We don't want these merchant category codes singling out gun owners as the items that they're buying and listing the items that gun owners are buying on their credit card bill so that the government can then look that over and see who's buying what guns. I admit we don't have any privacy in the modern age anyway, but this is just simply a way to make gun owners a separate class, a second-class citizen, and say, hey, you know what, Ed, we noticed that you bought 17 magazines the other day. Can we talk to you about that?
Right. It's many videos back you and I talked about, I said, to-do list. You said shopping list. Why do people keep a list of anything?
Right.
The list is there. This is maybe another one of those millions of things that they think up that they would totally never do. Yeah, it's obvious. Every now and then they slip up and come right out and say it. They want to set up a structure in which they can come and, as some people chuckle at whenever anyone says it, take your guns. Of course they want to.
Yeah.
They have forever. And they're going to do it through this kind of circuitous way because, just like with the NFA, National Firearms Act in 1934, they know it's against the law to do this. So they can't make it a law. They have to do something else.
Right.
It had to be a tax with the NFA, and then it had to be, well, this is just coding. This is just a way for us to keep better records. Yeah. You want to keep better records of who has stuff that you don't like so you can go pop them later on.
How many crack dealers are using credit cards to buy guns to commit their crimes in cities? That's what I want to know. Yep. I've used a credit card to buy a gun or two in my day.
Okay. I thought you were going to say you'd used a credit card to buy crack.
No. Somebody probably is selling it on a card. That's just wrong. No, I've used a credit card to buy a gun and firearms accoutrement, but more and more I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to keep a pile of cash in a locked box at my house. And when I want to buy a gun, I'm going to buy it with cash. I don't need... I know I'm on every list in the world.
And that is the response. One of the reasons they can get away with this kind of nonsense is a lot of people will say, I'm a member of the National Rifle Association and the United States Concealed Carry Association and Gun Owners of America and National Association for Gun Rights.
Yeah.
All of those companies have lists.
Right.
I'm already on not just the government lists. I'm on the lists that not the government people have. So a lot of people, they become, for lack of a better term, lazy. They say, it doesn't matter. I'm already on a list. Well, let's not give them another list.
Yeah. And not give them another opportunity to segregate out and to, where this goes. This whole, and people will say, well, you're being paranoid. It's the slippery slope argument that should never be used.
Okay, stop right there. In logic, slippery slope, I forget who I first heard this from, but I've heard a bunch of different people say it, and I'm going to say it now. In logic, slippery slope is a fallacy. And in politics, slippery slope is a guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely true. And somebody is going to take that list someday, that list of all of the people who bought guns with their credit cards, and they're going to say, these people are all gun buyers. Let's go search their house when something happens. And it might be 20 years down the road. It might be 50 years down the road, whatever it is. I said that very early on when I was given a DNR customer number. It's got to be 25 years ago or more, when I bought my deer hunting license, my Wisconsin state gun deer hunting license, and I looked at it and I said, I have a unique DNR customer number that is attached to the fact that I bought a gun deer hunting license. Yep. Well, there's other ways they could have found out, but now they know for sure I own at least one rifle.
Commies always play long game.
Yeah.
That is always the way that this is done. And it's really easy to say, screw it, I'm already on all their lists. Let's not give them more lists, and maybe let's chip away at some of the lists that they do have.
And to bring it back around to where we started, this is yet another reason gun owners need to continue to be politically active, to not, like you said, I'm just giving up. I'm already on the list. They're going to do whatever it is they're going to do. They're not going to do whatever it is they're going to do. Gun owners do have political power, and we can get control of the things we want to get control of, but we have to continually work at it because anti-gunners are continually working at it. It's never, ever going to stop. So now, let's switch gears to one of your favorite topics, air travel.
Air travel. Yeah.
So I just saw...
There's nothing an enormous gent like me likes better than climbing into an airplane and...
What are you, like 6'4"?
6'5", and strapping into a tiny little seat and maybe getting a few of those little cookies or a bag with 8 pretzels in it.
Yeah, I know how much you enjoy that, but the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I saw a press release from the Transportation Security Administration saying that a man at the Richmond airport was found with a gun. Well,
what were they doing?
Yeah, the reason that's news is because it so rarely happens. Remember, newsworthiness means it has to be kind of rare. And Yeah, I guess the TSA had only like a 4% success rate in the past anyway. But yeah, a guy showed up at the TSA checkpoint with a loaded revolver in his carry-on bag, and they spotted it on the X-ray machine, shut down the security line and everything. And boy, what a perfect time to talk about traveling with your firearms.
We were at, I forget which writers' conference it was, but we were talking to some people from the outdoor space who maybe aren't gun savvy. They're either not at all involved with guns, or they're only involved in the hunting end. They only use long guns. And I was talking to this fellow about, it's like, yeah, but they seize so many guns at airports. I said, okay, yes, but do you think each of those seizures was like a stopped 9/11? No. And he I said, no, all of those guns are dum-dums, or they were dum-dums that day.
Yeah.
Who were in a hurry, and they broke one of the fundamental rules that isn't in the fundamental rules, which is know where your guns are and know their condition. Yeah. They weren't trying to like, boy, oh boy, if I can get up in the cockpit of that plane, I can get them to bring back Billy Beer or whatever.
Yeah.
These were people who forgot. Yeah. Now, it's shameful. It's embarrassing. We've had people reach out to us about it.
You're supposed to be responsible.
But everybody laughs. Not everybody. A lot of people laugh and make fun of the person when it happens. And we've published stuff about this, to which I say, keep laughing. If you haven't acknowledged exactly how that happens, you need to.
Yeah. And people we know have gone up to checkpoints with firearms or training firearms or anything that's going to trigger the bells and whistles. I made it from Milwaukee all the way to New Haven, Connecticut with a K-bar knife in my backpack. Nobody said a word to me until I got to the place where I was going.
Are we talking like a folding pocket knife or like a K-bar?
A K-bar, a Marine Corps K-bar knife in my backpack. Nobody said a word to me. And then I also showed up accidentally at the Appleton airport with 50 rounds of .357 SIG in my backpack. And oh man, I didn't want to walk back out here. So I ended up losing my 50 rounds of .357 SIG. So yeah, it can happen, and people do make mistakes. The TSA makes mistakes. How in the world did I get this K-bar knife all the way to Connecticut?
Shouldn't you be able to bank those? Like, look, okay, I forgot that my gun was in here, but I snuck a full-size K-bar through 3 times, so can we have...
Through 3 different airports.
Hash these out.
And we understand that. We also understand how completely convoluted and uninformed the rules are, the convoluted rules and uninformed gate agents and others when we travel with firearms. I have traveled extensively with firearms and never had the same experience twice. When I get to the gate when I get to the check-in stage and I want to say, yes, I am declaring my firearm. Now what's going to happen? Never have I ever had the same experience twice.
Correct.
Traveling with a firearm. I've even gone so far as to carry a printed version of the TSA rules, to which the gate agent was like, I don't want to hear those. This is what we're going to do today. Okay, so in general, unload your firearm. Make sure it's locked in a hard case of some nature. I have traveled with firearms locked in a plastic ammo box. Mm-hmm. It was a lockable plastic hard case. They allowed it to go through. I have traveled with firearms that had their magazines loaded, but the magazines were removed from the gun. I have been told to unload the rounds from the magazine and put them only in the original ammunition box, which is a cardboard carton, or place them in a plastic ammunition carton. I'm kind of at wit's end on what to do. I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens next time I get to the airport with my guns.
It's especially frustrating because just like when somebody sells like a pocket multi-tool, like, hey, and it's TSA approved. Mm-hmm. When you get up to the front of the line, TSA approved exclusively means what the specific TSA officer you're dealing with will let through. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many people told you, I know I took that through security all the time, and my brother's a cop, and he said it's fine. Doesn't matter. It's whatever that person wants to do that moment of that day. And like you, I've never flown with a gun and had it happen the same way twice.
Yeah.
You have to empty out those mags. I have to go get a deputy sheriff. I've been backroomed. I've had the person just look at it and then nod and say, lock it up. The one that I see people mess up the most, short of things like showing up at the front of the line with the gun still in their holster or something like that. The one that people mess up is they want to be so safe. They do everything they can to be as safe as possible. They put a snap cap in it.
Right.
In the chamber, or they put 5 or 6 snap caps in their revolver. Nobody at the airport, except for maybe some of the cops, are going to know what those are. Leave the snap caps at home. Do not complicate this in any way.
Yeah. And
empty gun. Some people take the gun apart. If it's an auto, just take the slide off. I don't do that. Yeah. But I understand why some people do that, because you're probably going to be dealing with somebody who, other than the cops, they have never been in the same room as a gun that they could see. Yeah. They've been in a room with people with guns. They just couldn't see it.
Yeah. But to go to the TSA website and you can find out traveling with a gun right there, and it says, in a locked case, unloaded ammunition separate, from the firearm in there, and then go to the counter at the airline and it will be different. They will tell you something different. Like you said, sometimes they have cops show up, sometimes not. The single strangest interaction I've ever had with firearms was taking my gun into New York, and I travel on the HR 218. I have my retired police officer card with me. Taking my gun into New York City. I arrived in New York, picked up my bag. Well, I left from Milwaukee, checked my gun, went smoothly. Arrived in New York, picked up my bag. Spent 4 days wandering around the streets of New York City carrying my gun. Everything was fine. Nobody asked me any questions. I went back to LaGuardia to get on the plane to fly back to Milwaukee, and I declared that I had a firearm with me. 4 police officers from the Port Authority Police Department showed up to take a picture of my gun, copy down the serial number, take a picture of my driver's license, take a picture of my police ID, and then escort me with the gun to the back room where they put it someplace and sent me on my way. And I asked them, I said, why was it so important for you to know what I was doing as I was leaving? Nobody checked me in your city when I got here with my gun. I grabbed my bag off the carousel. I jumped in the Uber and went to my hotel and was living my life carrying my gun. It was just bizarre.
What'd they say?
Nothing. They were just like, whoa, this is the only time we knew you had a gun.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy. So, all right. I'm calmed down now.
Okay.
Let's talk about the outdoor side of what you're doing. You mentioned that earlier. And take a quick look at this video of a guy who stumbles upon, when I watch the video, I kind of think that maybe the first cat he sees is a baby mountain lion. It seems smaller. But before too long, he's face to face with a really angry full-size mountain lion. And the question is, what gun do you want when you're face to face with that lion making the bluff charges, which could just go into a regular charge at any time?
Well, were I, God forbid, in that situation, for one, I would not be filming it.
Yeah, well, you got to film it.
I'm an old person,
it's
though.
The modern era.
I don't even remember to film like my nephew learning how to water ski, let alone when I'm getting attacked by an animal. The most important, he fortunately, it appears, got out of this without having to.
Yeah, well, he was growling nicely. I mean, you can see
he was, man,
video.
vocalize, use that big boy voice, try to get this interaction to end. But when I'm outdoors, just doing normal stuff, not out in the backwoods or whatever, I just carry my normal EDC. Yeah. I carry a Glock 19. If I know I'm going to be away from pavement for days on end, I carry this guy. This is a cleared, physically and visually clear. This is, you may remember the days back when you could get a used Gen 3 Glock 22 in 40 Smith & Wesson for like $200.
Yeah, I think I paid $269 for the guns. One of mine says San Antonio Police Department.
That's what this one says too. Yeah, right? We both got one of these.
They have the best rummage sales.
They do. They have the best rummage sales. But for the outdoors, especially since we live in an area that does not have brown bears, everything's different. People are like, what about Alaska? Alaska's different. We'll have Tim Sundles. We'll hire him.
Come up and talk.
Do a whole series on Alaska.
Mike McNett from Double Tap.
Right.
One of those guys who shoots big animals.
For when you're out in the outdoors, whatever
Yep.
that means, whether you're in the swamp or you're in the big woods or you're on the plains, whatever. What's step one is what?
Yeah. You have a gun.
Have a gun.
Have a gun.
And especially if you bought one of these, and there's more of them now on the market, it seems like almost more of them on the market now than there were even 5 or 6 years ago, just because so many agencies are transitioning away from 40. You can get a world-class, reliable, fairly hard-hitting gun, especially for not brown bear country, for not very much money. And ammo-wise, outdoor use, dangerous animal use is one of the only times that a lot of the pros will tell you, you know, you should carry your jacketed hollow points when you're on duty. You should carry them in your EDC gun when your biggest concern is bad men and bad dogs. But if you are carrying this as an all-around self-defense against human, canine, ursine attackers, that flat-nose ball ammo, or hard cast too, but something flat-nose, and lots of it. So another reason I like these is they hold 15 rounds, 16 if you carry one chambered, which you should in a proper holster. So in that circumstance, where I am being flexed on by a big cat like that, it's never happened to me, but you're torn between, do you want a handgun or do you want a long gun? Obviously, if you have to shoot something that's trying to kill you, you would prefer to shoot it with like a 30 caliber rifle.
Right.
Long action elk gun, something like that. Well, am I going to want one hand for balance? You watch the old training videos of Louis Auerbach watching a guy through backing up, watching him walk a guy through backing up. It becomes very clear falling is a major concern, especially in a situation like a predatory animal. As long as you're up and bigger than that cat and you're yelling at it and doing all the stuff that he was, that's one thing. As soon as you're flat on your back, I bet if he had fallen over backwards,
that cat
like lightning, it would have been on him, because now it isn't bigger. Now he isn't bigger than the cat. So I'm going to say this just because full-size Glock is probably, short of maybe shooting clays with an 870, the pattern with which I have the most experience. So in an emergency like that, I would want something that I know inside and out, I can fire almost instinctively, and is going to give me one hand free to film it with my phone. Fine, I'll join the modern world. I'll have my other hand
stick
free.
in one hand, Glock 22 in the other hand, and I'm going to be right there with you. The 40 caliber, law enforcement agencies are going away from it, but you know what? Those flat nose 180 truncated cone rounds from the 40 caliber, they're going to penetrate deeply, they're going to hit hard, and you got 15 of them, and nothing else is getting in your way. I really like those. A lot of companies are coming out with them now, the chest rig holsters that put the gun right dead center for when you're out on the trail, when you're hiking and stuff. Everyone who knows me knows I'm not an advocate of open carry. I'm not going to be making a political statement in the city, carrying my gun openly to show that I'm ready for anything. But out on the trail, you can run those right underneath your backpack straps, and the gun is right there, center chest, easy to get to. It's not going to be easy to draw with your left hand if your right hand is injured, but it's a chest rig. It's right there. It's easy to get at. And a 40 caliber handgun against most of the major big game, predatory game, it's going to stop a black bear. It's going to stop a cougar. It's going to stop a wolf. It'll work against people too.
And you were talking about chest rigs for these. Whenever anybody says, I'm looking at a chest rig because I'm going to go on a hunt in Montana, or I'm going up to Alaska. Okay, awesome. Because I understand, like, if your hip holster is only going to do you so much good if then you have to put on 5 other layers because it's 22 below zero. One of the other reasons I'm such a big fan of the Glock 17 and 22 sized Glocks is that used holster aftermarket support is massive, and it is affordable. And if you're going to be wearing a chest rig, you need to understand that you're going to want to do things that involve taking that chest rig off,
right?
Because you're wearing it on your jacket. Well, under your jacket, you've got a vest and another jacket and all this other stuff. Spend the $25. Spend the $25 or $30 to get a retention, law enforcement style holster to snap that Glock into as soon as you take that chest rig off.
Right. Do not be unarmed.
So every now and then you hear about guys on an elk hunt, on a whatever hunt, where they had a gun, but he'd taken it off because, as it turns out, starting to field dress an elk is hard work. So he took his jacket off, and then the holster didn't fit, and then So make sure that when you take that chest rig off, that pistol goes safely right into a hip holster and is always with you. It is your side arm, not your over there arm.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're talking about, dangerous game and videos, polar bears, the only bear that eats nothing but meat, and they will happily hunt people given the opportunity. We watched this video here. It looks to me like he's using one of those, like a pump shotgun or an auto-loading shotgun with bean bags. It doesn't sound to me like loud ammo, but he shoots at the bear. Now the bear turns and comes after him, and he makes a mad dash to the snowmobile and gets away. And the bear continues to chase afterwards. Like, don't shoot me in the butt with that beanbag.
Yeah. Anybody who lives, most people deal with polar bears by not living within 1,000 miles of them, right? But anybody who does live within 1,000 miles of them should be watching that video 5 or 6 times to pick up some pointers. Like, well, no, you remember it from law enforcement.
Yeah.
When you park the vehicle, park it pointed in the direction you're going to want to drive it. Right? Let's not have a lot of, backing up, all this. Leave it running.
Yep.
If this is a neighborhood in which you can leave your snow machine running, leave it running. Have thought a little bit about at what point am I pulling the ripcord on this? Like, when am I? when is me shooting at this bear with whatever? When I first saw the video, I thought that this was like an impromptu circumstance. This is one of those research stations in northern Norway or something, and the guy had a long action 30 or 35 cal rifle or whatever and was just missing. I don't know. I think you may be right, but then you realize this is a hotel. Like, oh God, did he draw the short straw where he's got to go out with the beanbag gun to try to scare the...
Your animal control this week. Go get that polar bear out of here.
All right. Well, give me the sled that always starts, I guess. And so think about this kind of stuff. Obviously, almost no one who's going to hear this lives anywhere near polar bears except for zoos. But whether it's a bear, a black bear, a brown bear, a big cat, bad dogs, those are the second most dangerous animal in this country after bad men. Think about this now. While you're calm, while you're watching some vidges on the YouTube, put a little bit of thought into like, well, what would I do? What do you do if a dog is charging you? What do you do if a dog is growling and just walking slowly toward you? Poke around online and see how much trouble you get in. Like, what's going to happen if you shoot an animal in self-defense? The fish cops, as we used to jokingly call them, they can be kind of particular about shooting bears when you don't have a bear license.
Right. And then, of course, absolutely. I believe your story, Mr. Combs, that bear was attacking you. And that's where you're going to be wanting to film that interaction there. Right. I am also a great believer in lethal cover. Okay, you're going out there to scare the bear away from your bird feeder, and you zap the black bear with your paintball gun and the black bear gets mad at you and now it's a race back to your front door. I would prefer that you be provided or have some means of lethal cover to defend your life in a situation like that. Right. Or just leave the bear alone and buy some more birdseed later on,
And I don't know what's going on with bears. When you and I both grew up here in Wisconsin, and we both spent a lot of time in the outdoors. And when you, or a few years later, when we were 10 years old and we were camping and we said, oh boy, I hope somebody brought a gun because a bear might attack us, we would have been laughed at so hard, we would have never gone camping again. And something changed within the last 25 years. Something's different. They're nervier now than they used to be.
Bears are becoming more aggressive as far as I'm concerned.
And we had a couple here in Wisconsin. Fortunately, the kids were upstairs and weren't hurt, but bears at the bird feeder. A wife opens the window to yell at bear to go away. Bear takes it personally, charges the house, jumps in, smashes through the window screen or whatever. And now it's Three Stooges running around the kitchen island with a knife and a gun and fighting. They weren't killed. They had to kill the bear in their house. But I don't recall anything like that ever happening in the 80s or even the 90s. Or at least here in Wisconsin. And now it does, apparently. Surprise!
A bear sighting when I was younger, a bear sighting when I was 22 years old was an anomaly. It was like, oh, it's a bear. That's amazing. I had calls in town. There's a bear in the dumpster over at Subway. Why don't you go hit the, okay, take the baton out. That's the only time I've ever used my baton in law enforcement, beating on the side of the dumpster to get the bear to come out and leave.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that you tuned up a bear with a baton. That would be great. Okay.
No, whacking the side of the dumpster and Again, lethal cover. Got the gun in one hand, banging on the dumpster with the baton. I didn't know what the bear was going to do when he came out of there. I didn't know if he's angry or if there are cubs nearby or whatever is going on. But if you're going to engage with dangerous wildlife in that manner, you know what? I think you ought to have a means to protect yourself to stop that threat.
And I understand that some people are prohibited persons. They're not allowed to own or possess or carry a firearm. I get that. That's a different issue. But if you're going to go buy some bear spray, that means you are acknowledging that you might, it's likely enough that you're going to find yourself in a violent confrontation with a bear that you should have something that you can use to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And if you've made that decision, and these are still only $289.99 on sale, yeah, I would advise you to get a gun for some of that lethal cover and practice with it. You don't have to become an enthusiast. You don't have to go to the range once. No, just understand that you're buying that spray because you understand this is a thing that could very easily happen.
Yeah.
And bears are nervier now. It isn't the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. It's and
had it up to here with them.
More and more reports, the stuff that you're saying is, and they're figuring out if you don't lock your car, they know how to open the car door now. And they always
radio stations will be all messed up.
Yep,
and they smell bad. I don't know if you've ever been near one. Wow.
No, you can tell.
You can smell them. In the woods.
They're close by. If something stinks in the woods, it's either a Sasquatch or a bear. So I'm gonna vote for Sasquatch. That's the one I want to see. I noticed your pocket holster out here, and I immediately thought it was the reach through and could be the any other weapon holster.
This is not an any other weapon. This is one of those internet gun moments that's more difficult because a C Camp pistol does not have a way to lock it open, but this is an empty magazine and an empty pistol. I got this when I toured the C Camp factory years back. And I have a lot of pocket pistols dating back to what used to be backup guns, dating back to you're going to a party and it's 80-some degrees outside and you don't necessarily want to wear as much as you would normally wear. I love the idea of pocket guns because, again, it fulfills that first rule, which is...
Yeah, you want to have your gun.
Have a gun with you.
Yep.
Even if it's one that you don't use all that often and you apparently have trouble fumbling with sometimes. The number of people who have, and I bring that up for a specific reason, the number of people who we've heard stories from where they say, I heard the man yelling about something and he was beating against the door and I had a gun that I'd bought, 10 years ago, and I realized, oh man, I've never even shot that gun before, and I'm fumbling to get it loaded, and I can't quite get it set, but then I finally get it set up, and by that point, he was at my bedroom door, and I fired. Rule number one is still have a gun.
Yeah.
Now, we, being in the training business, hear stories like that and are like, dang it.
Yeah.
Like so many people want to tell so many people, oh, if you don't have any training, that gun's worse than useless. Well, not if you ask that person who had literally never fired this gun before, but used it to save their life. But pocket pistols are so neat to me because I love both ends of the spectrum. I love my tiny little featherweight, so small they're very difficult to shoot, and so light they're unpleasant to shoot. P380s. I'm a big fan of the first-gen Ruger LCPs.
Yep.
And then I love these beautiful stainless ones too, like this little C Camp. This one's in 380, and just because when I was going through which I wanted to end up with, I realized I already stocked 380 ammo.
Yeah,
so I might as well go with the 380 again. And no, this is not one of those AOW holsters. I believe, I'm no attorney, but I believe the rule is as long as the trigger is covered up and you cannot run the pistol while it's still in.
You cannot fire the pistol from inside its container.
This wallet holster is what this one is.
And that's a back pocket? That's
this is
how
a back pocket
that?
holster.
Yep.
We use this for photos here in the studio. When I carry either one of my front pockets. I don't do back pocket carry. I don't like the idea of a pistol being behind me. I don't like smaller back carry. I don't like backpack carry if the backpack's all the way back here.
Yeah.
In Spain, I saw a kid from, 50, 60 yards away at some plaza where we were. I saw a little kid pickpocket just open up a guy's backpack really gently and start taking stuff out. Don't carry your gun in your don't do that. Keep your gun. That's why a lot of people love AIWB carry is it's right here. I know what's going on in my lap at all times. So I don't carry in the back pocket, but some people do. And it's better that they do than they don't carry a gun at all. So
yeah. And while we're talking about, favorite little pocket guns, This is a North American Arms Guardian, and again, nut doesn't lock open, so we'll make sure that it's all safe. Everybody, magazine is out, magazine is empty. Visually and physically inspect the interior of the chamber there.
I feel very safe right now.
This is empty as well.
Internet can relax.
And yeah, I have a Kel-Tec gun that I used as a backup gun for a while I was on duty. One of the reasons I like this Guardian, probably the reason you like that Sea Camp, is it's an all-metal gun that makes it a little bit heavier for a tiny gun.
Yes.
Absorbs a little bit of the recoil, and it's not terribly uncomfortable to shoot. I still believe that, the full-sized or larger gun is always going to be easier to shoot, but there are times when you want a gun that's going to go in your pocket. So I utilize either a sticky holster or that, I wish I could remember the name now, but Elite Survival Systems makes a holster that also drops in your pocket, and when you grab the gun, the holster stays in your pocket when it comes out.
And I did something about these styles of holsters in the magazine a while back. A lot of people, myself included, and this dates back to when I was a teacher, didn't have hardly any money, and Mr. Combs clothes, as I call them, the clothes that I wore while I was at school, are expensive. So you get back from work, you immediately change into sweatpants left over from high school or whatever. When people talk about, your walking around gun, your house gun, like for when you're answering the door. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. You should have a gun for when you're answering the door. Well, most people, you shouldn't answer the door like, hello? Like this. Okay, well, so what you can do is stand with it behind your hip. Okay, well then what if you open the door and it's an emergency and it's one of your neighbors who needs help? You need to have your gun holstered when you get to the door.
Right.
And you need to have a place where you can safely put it away once you're done using it. These pocket guns are great for door answering. However, when you said it's a great little holster because you put it in your pocket and then when you pull the gun out, the holster stays in. I assessed half a dozen different pocket holsters like that in my current not to be worn in public sweatpants, the ones that I throw on when I get home. And
don't want to hear about them.
Half of them worked and half of them didn't.
Okay.
Right? The inside of the pocket you're going to use a pocket holster in
it's very important.
Clutch. Well, it's the difference between working and not working. Because otherwise, now you're standing here like this and you have the holster still on the gun. Now you have to do one of the most dangerous things you could ever be forced to do during a crisis, which is reach up toward what you know to be a loaded gun you're holding and try to pluck off a holster without shooting your offhand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is another reason that we harp on, as soon as you get your hand on a firearm and you're about to use it, your finger is not even on the, don't even let it snoop down like when a dog's kind of sticking its nose. No. Slide of the revolver or frame of the pistol, slide of the pistol or frame of the revolver every time. Because if you do have to reach up to grab that holster that Waka Waka decided to stay on the gun, you have to be certain that you're not going to blow your offhand off.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us around to another discussion about firearm safety. Before we wrap up with this, I want people to know that, pocket carry is an option. It's out there. Like every other self-defense option, practice, train, understand the limitations of what you got and what you're going to do with it. And in my case, people always ask me, if I'm using a sticky holster or one of those from Elite, well, what are you going to do if you got to reholster? And if my gun is out, I want people to reholster reluctantly. I'm not in a hurry to reholster.
Right.
From my front side hip pocket where I carry, if I carry in pocket carry, or my jacket pocket, I can transition to my offhand, pull that holster out and reholster that gun if I need to. I'm thinking if it's an actual incident where I'm really in trouble, I've fired my gun and the police are coming, I'm going to keep my gun out and ready until the police get there. Then I'm going to put it on the ground. There's not going to be much of a need for me to reholster.
Yeah, we did a whole video a while back on a man who was shot with his own gun by a cop who probably didn't even know how to safely handle her own sidearm.
Right.
One of the reasons that we teach, you can have your gun holstered when the cops show up, but it's probably going to be better to just put it down. Is to avoid that. Mm-hmm. Hey, Sanders, go get his gun.
Yeah.
Like, well, she or he maybe you don't like going shooting with that cop because they're so bad at this. Maybe something could happen. Yeah. Eliminate that. Of all the things you have to worry about right now, set that gun down on the ground.
Yeah. And
do not have the cops come and, like Mr. Bean goes to the academy, try to pluck a loaded gun out of your pants. That's we all saw what can happen when that goes down.
And I've said it countless times before that firearms accidents, negligent discharges, negligence happens during administrative handling, during something like that. And this poor guy that we were talking about, he was on a traffic stop. He didn't have a chance to take his gun out and put it on the ground.
Right.
He had it. He did everything right. Yep, I got my gun. Get out of the car. We're going to take the gun away. The cops have the right to do that. That's how things go wrong in situations like that. But while we're here, while we're on the topic, safety. It popped up in the office today. People are talking about what happens if, well, that gun is pointing at someone or that gun is pointing at a body part. So we want to make sure we're not doing that sort of stuff. You're absolutely right. The 4 cardinal firearms rules are of incredible importance. But you're not going to have negligent discharge with injury unless you break more than one of those firearm safety rules.
The most frustrating part about hypocrisy is pointing it out has a 0% success rate of getting people to change their behavior.
Right.
The more time you spend around people, if you spend enough time around the same people, you end up hearing things that they say that contradict each other. Mm-hmm. Things like, Grandpa, is that gun loaded? Like, is it dangerous? Well, it wouldn't be much good if it wasn't dangerous, would it? Okay. Well, that's the same grandpa, though, that yelled about, like, oh, look at this picture of this person drawn from his shoulder holster. He's pointing the gun right at his arm. Like, okay.
Yeah.
I understand that a lot of instructors say, bring this elbow up level
Get
with
that
your
arm
ear
out of the way,
and draw from your shoulder holster or whatever. But most people don't do that.
And again, I will say that is the best way. And I accept your premise that most people don't do that. And even if they don't, even if it is not perfect, it is still a safe way to do a dangerous thing.
And this is the bottom line, is a safe way to do a dangerous thing. There's so many people who've never had to do anything dangerous in their life, whether it was for work or whether it was to help somebody out or whatever. They've never had to do a dangerous thing in the safest way possible, that they really enjoy. Their little fists just ball up so tight when they think they can finally add something to the conversation, that they're going to yell about that, to which I would say, listen, we're already asking an awful lot of people who are going to take on the responsibility of carrying a gun. And if you want to, if that guy drawing from a shoulder holster blows a big hole in his brachial artery, he's not necessarily finished, but he's well on the way to being finished.
Pretty close.
A lot of the people who like to giggle and poke each other in the ribs about stuff like that carry Appendix.
Right.
Now, I have defended Appendix carry ever since I first became aware of it, because look, it's not like humans haven't been sticking firearms in their waistbands for a long time, dating back to the days when handguns were this long and they had a big long clip on the front so you could stick it down in a sash. The main beef a lot of people have with Appendix carry is you're going to shoot your femoral artery. You're going to shoot something else that's down there. Okay, yeah. Well, I didn't think we had to put don't shoot yourself with this in the user manual. If every time you access your pistol, your finger goes right there on the slide or right there on the frame of the revolver, that isn't nearly as much of a concern as if you're drawing like this. Now, we all know that the number one cause of negligent discharges is fingers going onto triggers when they shouldn't. And we all know that probably the second most common of actual, that was an accident discharges are those little plastic toggles on jackets and...
Oh, yeah.
Right, especially with a Glock trigger like this. So before you come at me, bro, about somebody drawing this from a shoulder holster and temporarily maybe pointing it at their arm, look down and see if maybe you're carrying Appendix.
Right.
Because there's a good chance you might be. And I know how much fun it is to tell people they're wrong. Yeah. I also enjoy that at times as well. But we're trying to do a dangerous thing. There is no safe way to do this.
Yeah.
We're trying to do a dangerous thing in the safest way we can.
In the safest way possible. It's not going to be completely safe, and understand that. And people will complain as I say this, and people always do when I talk about
Yeah,
the
they
idea,
get high on it.
Yeah. When I talk about the idea that, we have the 4 cardinal safety rules, always treat every gun as if it's loaded. And I will say, well, what are you going to do then when you're cleaning your gun? It's not loaded. It's far more important to know the status of your firearm than to simply treat it as if it's loaded. Because when you have to do something with an unloaded gun, then you have to make sure that it's unloaded. Then I may treat it as if it's unloaded.
Right.
And never point your gun at anything you don't want to destroy. Well, you don't want to point your gun at your own arm, but getting that gun into action, well, don't put your finger on the trigger unless you've made a conscious decision to shoot. That's a good one.
And
I love that one.
I've long referred to them as radical fundamentalist safetyists. These are the people that would be doing the Salvation Army style tambourine singing and all that back in the temperance days. It is their goal to shriek through a bullhorn at you that they are the world's safest gun handler.
Right.
Never point your gun at anything you don't intend to destroy. I don't want to destroy light switches and microwaves and other stuff that I look at when I'm dry fire training. This is the same magazine that tells people to dry fire train as much as they can.
Yeah.
Well, that is not treating a gun as if it's loaded, because you would never fire a loaded gun in your house. You wouldn't do that in your house.
I wouldn't shoot at my light switch.
And that is, exactly. And that is pointing your gun at something you are not willing to destroy. And I understand why we start with the super basic rules. I've recently been helping some people teach some smaller kids how to shoot. At the beginning, just never ever point this at anything that you don't want to shoot.
Yep.
That's a really important rule, but it's one of those asterisk rules that by the time the kid's old enough to start dry fire training and stuff okay, I told you that because you were 10. Mm-hmm. And it was of the utmost importance that this never gets pointed at anything that you don't want to shoot. So in an abundance of caution, I said, never point this at anything that you don't want to shoot. Right now, we're practicing your double action revolver trigger press, so we're going to be doing some dry fire training, and this is part of growing up. You start to learn that the simplest explanations you got when you were 9 aren't the same ones that work when you're 60.
Get a little bit more complicated.
Right.
And in a defensive scenario, in a defensive incident, you may be pointing your gun at someone you don't immediately intend to shoot. You pulled your gun out and hollered, "Stop, get back," and you're pointing your gun at that person. You still have not decided to shoot that person. They may surrender immediately or turn around and run away or do something other than continue their attack. You're pointing your gun at that person. You've violated a safety rule. But your finger is not on the trigger. Your gun is not going to go off. I argue that all the time too. Guns don't go off. Guns are made to fire. You have to do a very specific sequence of things to make your gun fire. And law enforcement officers hold people at gunpoint. They are pointing that gun at someone. They're trying to make sure that there's nothing in the background. They know what their target is and what's beyond it, but they're still pointing a gun at someone. They don't intend to shoot yet.
Well, and maybe with this discussion, we need to look at where did the most famous set of firearm safety rules come from?
Right. Jeff Cooper.
At Gunsight. So maybe we need to look at those as those are the rules that you announce at the beginning of a class. Mm-hmm. Don't take these home. Don't take these out on the street when carrying a gun. But when you're here, when you're on my range, you're going to follow those rules.
Yeah.
And other rules are just going to have to be modified because otherwise you can't clean your gun, you can't dry fire your gun, you can't do practice draws with an empty gun, etc.
Yeah. And that discussion, and we're going to get comments and notes and letters to the editor, and people are going to be upset with us, and maybe people in our own company are going to be upset. How dare you say that? Well, because we have to be realistic about we are doing a very dangerous thing, and we are doing it the safest way possible. And truly, in order to have a negligent discharge with injury, you have to have broken more than one of the safety rules. If you only break one, it's bad. You broke a safety rule. That was wrong. You shouldn't have done it. But you didn't hurt anybody in doing it that way. Now, if you break two of them, that is, you point your gun at someone and you didn't intend to shoot them, and you put your finger on the trigger and pulled it, now and maybe you've broken another one. You didn't treat your gun as if it was loaded. You didn't know the status of your firearm. Was there a round in the chamber? It is a series of steps that get you to the point. That's why I don't like to use the word accident. I correct myself when I say accidental discharge. It is a negligent discharge. You didn't intend to do it, and you did it mistakenly, not accidentally, not, oh, whoopsie. Nope, you were negligent. There was a whole series of things you had to do to make that gun get really loud without you intending to do it. And it's just, it's one of those things that I could talk about this topic for hours and go on, and I might not convince anybody. You're absolutely right. So,
Afraid not.
All right, let's talk about knives.
Let's.
You carry a knife every day?
I do. I've carried a knife every day for a long time, and I carry 2 knives, actually. I carry...
Well, aren't you just ready for some sort of major assault?
Because for a long time, I only carried one.
Yeah.
I used to always carry a knife like this, a nice big lock blade,
Yep.
in case my bush plane goes down in the Alaskan interior, etc.
Oh, that is the stout Spyderco too. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And then I realized that I never used it. And
Right.
that I was using stuff like the razor blade that I keep on my desk, and etc. So then for a long time, I would just carry that,
Yeah.
which is the Swiss Army Wader, which is just a blade and a combination cannon bottle opener.
Yep.
And then I realized, well, you're in the self-defense industry. You need
Yeah.
to carry a knife too as a backup force option. If for no other reason, then it would seem weird if you didn't. So yes, I carry this Spyderco. I forget which model it is, but I don't. Knife fighting is why humans invented guns.
Right.
We don't want to do it. Only, I shouldn't say that. Terribly mentally ill people want to stick knives in people. Everybody else doesn't. So, yes, that knife, that Spyderco, is a backup force option, but it is a terrible backup force option. I am way better at accurately putting bullets where I want them to go than I am at, what's the knife fighting system that we run in the magazine each month? Marshall Blades Concepts.
Marshall Blade Concepts from Mike Janish.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big fan. Mike's
Yep.
a great guy.
And
Nice
he-
enough to have me as a guest in his home. Terrific person.
And he teaches a solid system.
Yes, he does.
And he teaches it based on legal principles of self-defense.
Yep.
Love it. But I don't want cuts that deep.
It's such a traumatic way to be forced to defend yourself that most of the nation's military's regular forces aren't even trained in it.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's not explicit.
Yeah.
They don't do the same training that a lot of the special operations guys do. So, yes, I do. How about you?
I have a lockback folding knife similar to that one that happens to be sitting on my desk right now because I changed shirts for the video operation. And I know that I use it to open boxes. That's about the extent of it. When I was putting on a duty belt every shift, every week, I would carry a K-bar TDI knife behind my magazine pouch. One of those little
I carried one
boomerang
as well.
Angled knives, and feeling that I wouldn't have to open anything if I
Right.
needed to use my knife as the last ditch resort. And I took the class, the TDI class, directly from John Benner, the guy who created this thing. And hearing him talk about what you could do with that knife was disturbing. I was like, I don't want to do that to someone. But if it's the last thing I got to do before he gets my gun,
If we got to get
I'm-
1600s about this,
yep,
yeah.
I'm going to do that to someone. For alternative weapons for me, it's flashlight, can of pepper spray. There's one out there in my truck now waiting for the angry neighborhood dogs to come around and things like that. But I kind of have this feeling that my knife, my daily knife, is going to be opening the packages that we get from vendors.
And force option wise, the other reason I switched back to this one was I carried that TDI on my offside at 7 for like the last 3 years. And the TDI knife is basically at an angle like this.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I don't use any knives at that angle. I have a lot of practice using knives like this for whittling and carving a pumpkin and cutting up a steak, etc. But I don't use many knives that are at that angle. And that's one of the things that Janice talks about is you're going to have to build on your existing skills. And when you get a knife in your hand, especially if you're a hunter and you have experience breaking a cervix pelvis or otherwise taking apart big animals, you're going to have to rely on the stuff that you already know.
Right.
This is going to be happening so fast. It isn't going to be like the classic scene from everybody making fun of self-defense. Okay, now grab me. No, grab me with your other hand.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have time to do that. So I'm not going to give people too hard a time about whatever it is that they carry as a knife backup force option wise, as long as it is something with which you have reps in, with which you have experience, even if it is just cooking and cutting up food.
Yeah.
Then, well, get a knife that's most similar. A lot of people probably have more reps on their most used kitchen knife in their kitchen than they have on any other tool on this planet.
Yeah, I would imagine you're probably right about that. The reason I like the TDI knife and the reason I always felt so comfortable with it was just how simple the training was when we were going through that. Part of what, and he laughed when he said it, but it was absolutely true. Part of what John said when we were going through the class was, all right, you're going to use this knife when it gets totally bad and everything else is gone to hell, and now you got to pull out this knife. And what I want you to do is reach down just as you would be grabbing a magazine from your magazine pouch. The knife will come up in your hand, and then I've been to some knife classes where I've heard words like step 17.
Right.
Nope, he said there was no step 17. It was pull that knife out and start applying the sharp edge to your attacker's arms until he lets go.
Yeah.
And then you back up and see if you can get control of your gun again. And he gave one case, I believe it was an officer in somewhere in Kansas, either Kansas City or it might have been in Kansas City. Guy grabbed for his gun. They're fighting for the gun. Officer pulls out the TDI knife and shoves it into the back of the bad guy's hands. And the response was, and that bad guy just decided he didn't need that gun so bad after all after that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I wanted to do in high stress emergency, was not think about anything other than pull this out and put the sharp edge against the bad guy on his arms, because that's what's fighting me, until he decided to let go.
And look, now we're just arguing, should you carry a revolver, should you carry an auto?
Yeah.
It depends on you. I want you, step one should be make sure you have a backup force option.
Yeah.
Could be a knife, could be OC, could be whatever. But if I'm going to have to go back to my Louis Auerbach here. Well, I carry a TDI because, okay, great. Well, no, I carry a system. Okay, good.
Yep.
Let's go train.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that a lot of people end up not being so hot with their knife as a backup force option is because I can unload a Glock 22 and make sure I'm in a room with no ammo and very safely train. The way that people hurt themselves training with guns, I've noticed, especially when you're doing gun retention stuff, is they'll cut themselves with the front sight.
Yeah.
That's about as bad as the injuries can get. Training with a hot knife, in photo shoots, we refer to something like this.
Yep.
This is a hot set because this is a real knife.
Yeah, that could cut you.
This could cut you. A lot of people will say, well, yeah, well, go buy a training knife, dummy. Well, okay, a training knife costs like $50.
Yep.
And a lot of people are either going to buy the cheapest training knife they can, which is still better than not buying a training knife, but it's not going to be the same model that they carry every day. Or they're an enthusiast and they already own one and they're calling me the dummy for saying you can still go buy the cheapest one that you want.
Yep.
But you do I don't believe it's that safe. And I believe it is borderline unreasonably unsafe to do your training with a hot knife.
Yeah.
That's asking a lot of yourself to make sure you don't end up. And where do most people carry the knife?
Yeah. Yeah.
In their pocket, down by your groin. Yep. Like, this could end up being some problems that you're not going to be able to just walk off. So get the training knife, please.
Yeah. And you're right. Have something, and we'll go right back to it. Train again. And let's shift gears now. Trainers. Biggest problem you have seen with a firearms trainer, something that you didn't like, that you're like, you know what, I probably wouldn't have done it that way.
There's a tie for me. The first one is they just talk too much. And part of what the students are paying you for is your experience. If you were a beat cop in St. Louis for 11 years and then you made sergeant and you wound up putting in 25 years as a law enforcement officer working in St. Louis, Missouri, you absolutely have information that private citizens need.
Yep.
But you can't charge these people just to tell them stories. You have to be giving them the information that is going to be applicable to their personal protection plans, et cetera. So that's one, is just too many stories. The other problem is, and I've been researching and trying to find patient zero for this, but it's setting up your students. Meaning, all right, what's up? It's 11:30 at night. Somebody's knocking on your door. What do? And you hear, well, I'd get my flashlight, and the instructor will let every student in the room say one or two things, and then be like, ha, no, you don't answer the door. Like, what gun would you have if you knew you were going to be in a fight? If you knew you were going to be in a fight, you wouldn't be there. Like, setting students up like that. I used to be a teacher. I know that you never do that. Asking questions in general is a crappy instruction device for people who are new at something. It's one thing if you or I, we've literally been at training before where they'll say, okay, what do they do in your department? Are you one of those do it now departments? Or are you one of those, like, but when you're dealing with people who are new at this, I wouldn't ask questions to set up my fourth graders in math class. Like, what is the answer? No, it's 70. Like, you're making them look dumb, and you're making them feel dumb, and you're being a poor instructor if you're doing that. So those are the two that I see the most often is you're just talking too much. As great as the story is, man, we have 3 hours, and we're not even out at the range yet. And the other one is trying to be funny and asking questions that end up making your students feel small. It's a terrible idea.
And for me, same thing as the war story thing. And I've heard some just egregious, it's like, oh, if there's a survey at the end, I'm writing that one down. The one instructor at a very notable place said that he often walked around with money hanging out of his wallet so that he could engage people who are coming after him. And I'm like, no, that's not what we understand. Yep, you've had some experiences, and now we're
either that's a lie or you're a murderer. Like, what are we even doing here?
So that sort of thing, and then this idea of treating everybody as if they know as much as you, or should know as much as you, or are as interested in you, and
that's a tough one.
I'm guilty of that sometimes too, because I love the firearms industry and I love what I'm doing, and I think everybody else is as interested as the intricacies of the Glock operating system as I am, and they're not.
I had that moment. I was student teaching AP English, and I'm standing in front of a room full of kids, high school juniors and seniors. I'm saying, so you see, the character of the Duke and the Dauphin and the adventures of Huckleberry. Shit, you guys don't like this as much as I do you? Like, just damn it. I was so into this. And right. So make sure that you're there. If you're teaching a beginner's class, and teach an advanced class if you want to. There are plenty of people that don't want to go to another beginner's class. But if you're teaching that beginner's class, when you say, all right, access your reload. Well, what does that mean? Like, you have to walk this person through nice and slow, finger on the side of the magazine with the bullets and et cetera.
And importantly too, if you're that student, if you're the beginning student, the first time, even second time student, whatever, speak up, stop. Excuse me, we're not into it the way you're into it. Can you bring it down to our level and show us how this all works?
And it used to be that were a student to ask that, the instructor would possibly say something rude and then just keep moving on.
Right.
Most instructors today understand they may say something that makes a student feel small around the 13 other people in the class. And in 1993, that would have been the end of it. The student would have been like, "Rah!" and storm off and not take a class from them again. That student gets to go on the internet now. So all of you crusty, all of you crusty, I'm really old school, which is your way of saying you're really rude and bad at customer service. All of you folks, you need to understand that the students do have a say in it now.
Yes. And we as instructors are here to be welcoming and encourage them and get them. We want them to do what it is we do. And you're right. Nobody's going to do it if we're making them feel small or bad about themselves, or I'm just not coming back.
And learn to read the room. This is the other really difficult part about anything involving the gun world, whether it's gun writing, whether it's instruction, etc. How many great football and hockey and baseball players and basketball players have gone on to become comically terrible coaches?
Right.
A lot. Okay, so you're asking me to find somebody who is a really good shot, really good at handling the big ones, rifle,
Right.
shotgun, pistol, maybe
Yep.
subgun, depending on where we're talking about instructing. Somebody who's a really good shot and who's really good in front of people and who's a really good communicator and who's really good at learning a curriculum from a book.
Yeah.
We're down to like 18 people in the United States. Seriously.
Yeah, it becomes,
So-
when you're stacking these up.
On the one hand, be forgiving of instructors. Maybe they are a really good instructor, but they're not the best at speaking in public. Or maybe they are a really good instructor. They're constantly joking about not being the best shot on staff. Well, they're doing that because they understand that they're not there because they've won the most Border Patrol pistol shooting championships. They're there because they're the best instructor.
Right.
So just as the instructors need to meet the students halfway, meet your instructor halfway too. His or her specialty might not be speaking in public or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Ed. I
My
think
pleasure.
we should plan to do this maybe again next week. We'll see. Photo shoot next week.
Photo
though.
shoot next week.
Yes, another upcoming edition of Concealed Carry Magazine, folks. You know you want to read it.